8 spine-chilling road trip encounters revealed, sinister secrets from haunted Appalachia. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting twisted shadows on the narrow Appalachian roads. The worn Subaru rumbled as Sarah tightened her grip on the steering wheel, the weight of her children silent in the back seat. Kyle, 10, worry etched in his brow, fidgeted with his seatbelt. Ella, 13 and ever distant, lost in her headphones, shut out the world. This was supposed to be a reconnection, but ominous clouds rolled in from the mountains, a prelude to something far darker. Their laughter died when they saw a dilapidated diner with a flickering neon sign that screamed desperation. Curiosity prickled through the hesitation. "Let us check it out," Sarah said, forcing a smile. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of rust and old fries, a world frozen in a time that had long forgotten joy. Photographs lined the walls, smiling families from decades past, now trapped forever in silent agony. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine when Ella's gaze fell upon a weathered pamphlet detailing local legends, a spirit seeking retribution against those who betray trust. "What if?" Kyle began, but Sarah cut him short. "It's just a story," she insisted, yet her own frayed nerves told her otherwise. They left the diner, and dusk wrapped around them like a shroud as they climbed into the car. The GPS sputtered, only dark roads lay ahead. The comforting chirp of crickets was replaced by an eerie stillness, as if time had paused in dread. Suddenly, they found themselves in an unfamiliar town, streetlights flickering like candles in the wind. Residents watched with strange, unwavering smiles, their eyes glistening with something Sarah felt but couldn't define. Panic thrummed in her chest. What was this place? "Mom, let us go," Kyle urged, glancing over his shoulder. But it was too late, they had already stepped into the web. "Can you help us find somewhere to stay?" Sarah asked a woman who stood too close, her voice saturated with too much sweetness. The woman nodded, her smile widening, but the directions were vague, riddled with the hushed weight of something unspoken. As they moved deeper into the town, Kyle stumbled upon a crumpled flyer, "Help for families in distress," the imagery eerily reminiscent of the diner's past. Their hearts raced in sync, the thrill of fear mingling with rising dread. "Mom, let's just keep driving," Ella insisted, ripping off her headphones. The sense of foreboding peaked as laughter morphed into whispers around them. They were not welcome, strangers were circling, their smiles too wide, glances locked onto the Johnson family like vultures. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The atmosphere thickened with tension as they spotted the diner's figure re-emerge, a man this time, dressed like a caricature of the past, a sinister blend of hospitality and malice. He was the town leader, his presence overlooking them like a shadow growing darker. "Everything's just fine," he said, voice smooth like silk hiding barbs. Anxiety ignited, seeping into Sarah's very soul. Could they trust each other anymore? Every secret buried between them felt open now, lay bare against this backdrop of potential betrayal. As night fell, a bolt of realization struck like thunder. The town thrived on its folklore and the weight of hidden treachery. Could familial bonds withstand such sinister truths? In the heart of the Appalachian darkness, the Johnsons were not just running from a haunted past, they were being drawn into a present more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The ultimate question loomed over them as the shadows thickened. Would their secrets tear them apart before they could escape? As night deepened, Sarah felt the weight of the stairs like a heavy cloak draped over her shoulders. The ominous laughter surrounded them, thrumming through the chilly air like a taunting melody. Deep in her gut, she knew they had crossed a threshold from which there was no turning back. "Let's just find somewhere to sleep," she murmured, the words barely escaping in a breath. Ella shrugged, her patience waning. "I don't want to stay here. something's wrong." Her voice trailed off, eyes darting around as if she could sense the darkness hovering. Kyle clenched his fists, his small body rigid in the seat. "What if those people are, bad?" Before Sarah could respond, the man from the diner reappeared, materializing in the fog that wrapped around them like an unseen predator. She barely noticed when he leaned closer, their breaths mingling in the thickening night air. His smile was plastered and firm, yet his eyes danced with something sinister. "Ah, you're looking for hospitality. You're in luck. The inn down the road has plenty of rooms." "Thanks, but we can find our way," Sarah retorted, already twisting back to the car. "Nonsense," he chimed, his voice a nearly hypnotic lilt. "I insist. You're our guests now." A chill snaked up Sarah's spine. It felt like he was not just welcoming them, he was wrapping them in a net spun with lies. "Mom, please let us go," Kyle pleaded again, nearly shouting now. Sarah's heart raced as she searched Ella's face, now a mask of dread. Turning, she met the man's gaze, and for a heartbeat, silence flooded the area, a heartbeat so heavy it thudded in her ears. "Your family, they hide a truth." He leaned down, his breath brushing against her cheek, the smell of decay and something more repulsive coating her senses. "Will you cast it aside and accept our true community? Let us go. Now." Ella gripped her mother's arm, breaking the standoff. With her instincts screaming, Sarah yanked the car door open, but the moment their collective panic erupted into action, a small crowd materialized. They circled them like wolves regarding their prey. Eyes glowed like embers in the night, illuminating their warped grins, a collection of masks that twisted unsettlingly in the low light. "Don't chase the shadows. Join us," one of the residents whispered, and as he stepped forward, Sarah felt a bizarre energy flicker in her veins, a pull that wickedly intertwined her thoughts and desires. "Mom!" Kyle cried, his innocent voice slicing through the thickening air. Panic turned to desperation. Sarah slammed the door shut, chest heavy with dread and confusion. "Drive, drive!" she yelled, but even as she swung behind the wheel, the car felt pinned to the earth, as if it had melded into the town's unholy soil. A child, no older than Kyle, stepped forward from the throng, clothes too big and face too far gone, glancing pleadingly. "Help us!" he whimpered. The next instant, he grinned, his lips curling like a serpent's, an amused witness to their impending doom. "Don't be afraid, we're all family here." The town leader stepped closer, shadowing them with a presence that felt ancient and unyielding. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the scene into half-light, drowning Sarah in palpable fear. This was not just about them, it was a connection deeper than blood binding, suffocating. Darkness enveloped them while secrets pulled tighter, the town's desires coiling like constrictors. But one last thought pierced through Sarah's mind: was there something lurking within her family that tied them to this place? As she fumbled with the keys, the haunting echoes transformed into sinister whispers, "Family, family," and as she turned to her children, the question screamed within her: what had they brought to this haunted town? With panic surging through her, Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white against the dark leather. She kicked the engine to life, praying it would roar back in defiance against the oppressive atmosphere. But the engine sputtered, hesitant, as if it too sensed the danger lurking just outside. The crowd loomed closer, eyes shining with a malevolent glint. The once lively rhythm of laughter spiraled into a heavy silence, tension thickening the air like smoke. Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror, and the boy with the beguiling grin was standing right behind them, his face twisted into a ghastly mask of delight and despair. "Please, let us get out of here." Kyle's voice trembled, his innocence shattered by a creeping dread clawing at his heart. Ella, nearly shaking, pressed against him, her breath quickening. "Try again," she urged, eyes darting around, panic nearly consuming her. "You have to try." With a deep breath, Sarah turned the key once more, praying to an undefined god that the car would comply. The engine rasped but then caught, filling the suffocating quiet with a reassuring rumble. She floored the gas, the tires screeching against the cracked asphalt, hoping to break free from this nightmarish clutches, but as they surged forward, the moment was obliterated by a thud that echoed against the car's frame. A man had stepped into their path, arms raised, his face just a twisted shadow under that pale moon. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice a booming foghorn amidst their frantic breaths. The jolt of fear sent Sarah's heart racing faster than the engine could manage. Her instincts screamed at her to hit the brakes, but something the intensity in that gaze held her captive. A part of her wanted to obey. "Mom!" Ella shrieked, panic coiling around them. "Don't stop!" With grit, Sarah swerved, the tires screaming as they dodged the man's outstretched arms, veering off the main road into a narrow dirt path that curled deeper into the suffocating woods. Branches clawed at the car as if the forest wished to ensnare them too. They barreled further into darkness, the trees closing in like a tightly woven net. The whispering wind carried chilling threats through the open windows, echoing the fervor of their fears. "What if we're lost?" Kyle whimpered, panic thrumming in his voice. "Just keep going," Sarah urged through gritted teeth, her heart drumming against her ribs. The glow from the dashboard illuminated their faces in frantic flashes, betraying the terror clawing at their souls. But the sounds of pursuit followed them, a cacophony of laughter and rumbling footsteps, their echoes bouncing off trees as if the very landscape was alive, a bloodthirsty audience anticipating their downfall. Then the headlights swept over something ahead, a dilapidated shed creaking in the moonlight. It looked like a relic of despair, the door ajar, a yawning mouth inviting them to stumble in. Panic gnawed at Sarah, the wisdom of retreat was hard-won, yet here was a possible haven. "Should we stop?" Ella whispered, the weight of uncertainty settling between them. "Absolutely not," Sarah snapped, her thoughts racing. But as she glanced at her children, their terror mirrored in her own reflection. The only source of light against the inky blackness was the shed, like a lighthouse in a storm. Suddenly, the laughter crescendoed, rupturing the night's eerie calm, drawing closer. There was no deciding. They were running out of time. "Get ready!" she shouted as she slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt, dust swirling like shadows in their wake. Anxiety coursed through her. What waited inside that forsaken place? As they huddled in the vehicle, silence enveloped them once more. In that moment, Sarah spotted figures moving between the trees, shadows dancing, their intentions concealed beneath an unholy veil, the promise of secrets clawing at her psyche. The final frontier loomed before them. Would they dare to seek refuge in the darkness of the shed? "What's waiting for us?" she thought, terror tightening its grip as the laughter returned, echoing around them like a malicious dirge. Could turning back lead to salvation, or would confronting the darkness be their only chance for escape? The moment the car screeched to a halt, Sarah's heart felt like it was caught in a vice. The oppressive silence hung thick in the air, a silence that felt alive, brimming with dread. She turned her head slowly, scanning the shadows. Kyle's face was pale, wide-eyed with fear, while Ella clutched her brother's arm, her trembling fingers betraying her anxiety. "Are we really doing this?" she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the suffocating stillness. "We don't have a choice," Sarah replied, forcing a sense of authority she didn't feel. Every instinct screamed at her to speed away, but the laughter and footsteps were close, too close. A frantic breath escaped her, mingling with the tension of that night. "We go." The children nodded, uncertainty mingled with a spark of resolve. With shaking hands, Sarah pulled the door handle. It swung open with a groan, the sound cutting through the dark like a knife. The shed loomed before them, its door gaping wider as if inviting them to step inside. "Stay close," she cautioned, stepping out first, her shoes crunching on unseen gravel. Each sound was an intruder, echoing out into the haunting void of the woods. She glanced back. Kyle was hesitant, his foot half out of the car. "Mom, what if he began?" But Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp as the chill that crept into their bones. "Now!" she hissed. They hurried towards the shed, the door creaking as Sarah pushed it open further. A musty scent wafted out, thick with dust and neglect. It felt as if they had opened the tomb of forgotten sorrows. The darkness inside seemed to consume the very light of the moon, a velvety black that hung like a shroud, getting everyone in. Sarah quickly shut the door behind them. The sudden darkness felt even more alive, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the distant cacophony reverberating outside, a relentless echo of eerie laughter. "Can you see anything?" Ella whispered, her voice tense. "No," Sarah admitted, fumbling for her phone to use as a flashlight. Her fingers froze when she realized it had slipped into her bag during the chaos. "I can't see a thing." Panic surged again. The laughter outside twisted into something darker, more sinister. It was no longer just a sound, it felt like a taunt, a reminder of what awaited them. She strained to listen, desperate for any sign of safety. "Maybe we should," Kyle started, but Sarah cut him off again, her voice barely above a whisper. "We wait. We have to stay quiet." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside, a cacophony of splintering wood. It sent a jolt through Sarah's veins. The door rattled violently, then went still. Their breaths caught like birds in a net, waiting for the impending doom. "Mom, what was that?" Ella's voice trembled, an urgency palpable in her question. Before Sarah could answer, a light flickered through a crack in the shed's wall. It was dim, but it grew brighter, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. A figure passed by, casting a long shadow against the wooden walls. "Can you see who it is?" Kyle whimpered, inching closer to Sarah, the warmth of her side barely comforting as their fear enveloped them. "No," she breathed, horror creeping into her thoughts as she stared into the sliver of darkness, her heart a chaotic drum in her chest. Was it one of them? Had they discovered their hiding place? The laughter rose again, more frenzied, enveloping the shed, igniting a primal fear. It played with the revelation of dread. Was the rushing sound of footsteps the prelude to their end? "Get down!" Sarah whispered fiercely, pushing the children behind an old, dilapidated crate. Tucking herself beside them, she could feel the heat radiate off their small bodies, mingling with her terror. As the figure outside lingered, she felt a clenching in her gut. They were trapped, caught in a relentless game. Would they stay hidden long enough to escape? Or would the darkness swallow them whole? The door rattled once more, a slow, deliberate sound, each jolt sending tremors through her heart. "Please," she whispered into the silence, but what she didn't know was that they weren't the only ones hiding. In the depths of the night and the shadows of the shed, a sinister presence waited, hungry for the secrets hidden within the darkness. The wind howled outside, rattling the shed as if it were a creature hungry to get inside. Sarah pressed her back against the cold wooden wall, her heart pounding like a trapped animal. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. She felt Ella's small body quivering next to hers, and barely resisted the urge to pull her closer. "Stay quiet," she reminded softly, but her own voice shook. Every shadow shifted in the dim crack of light, every creak of the building felt like a countdown. What was out there? What had they stumbled into? Kyle's whisper broke the silence. "What do they want?" His voice wavered, panic creeping in like fog. "I don't know," she replied. But even as she spoke, a chilling thought curled around her mind. What if it wasn't just the laughter that haunted these woods? What if there was something more? The laughter swelled. It was closer now, no longer carefree but laced with malice. Each peal felt like it was slicing through the air, punctuating the thick tension that filled the shed. Sarah tightened her grip on Kyle and Ella, trying to ground them both amidst the chaos outside. Then, a distinct thud echoed from outside, followed by a soft, low growl. It sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Her eyes darted to the door. She could almost see the shape of something lurking just outside, something watching. And then, quick footsteps, heavy, deliberate, made their way to the shed. A figure halted just outside, casting a long shadow that stretched across the floor. Sarah held her breath, the children mirrored her stillness, bodies tense like coiled springs. "Please just go away," she murmured, though she knew it was futile. The shadow moved closer, obscured by the thin beam of light creeping through the cracks. Suddenly, the door handle began to twist slowly. Hope and terror collided in a storm in her chest. With every click of metal, she felt the weight of 1,000 possible horrors on her shoulders. Was it just the wind? Or something more sinister? "Mom," Kyle whimpered, his voice barely a gasp, like a breath caught in his throat. "Shoo." Her voice was sharp, a desperate plea as they all shrank back. And then the door creaked open, groaning like it was alive, its hinges protesting against the intruder. The figure loomed in the entrance, barely illuminated but recognizable, too tall, too still. Sarah's heart raced as dread washed over her. This was no ordinary person. The figure stepped inside, its face obscured, but the glint of something metallic caught in the fleeting light. It reached towards the dimness beyond the doorframe. "Anyone home?" It rasped, a voice like gravel. Sarah's stomach churned. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where could they go? "Mom." Ella's voice grew more panicked, her teary eyes wide as she clutched her brother's hand. Before Sarah could think, she moved instinctively, reacting to a danger that felt both immediate and ancient. "Under the crate. Now." Her voice was urgent, heart racing as she pushed them down, forcing them beneath the wood. As the figure stepped in, the door swung closed behind it. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, cutting off all hope of escape. The creature paused, its head angled, as if it had caught onto something, an aroma, a pulse, the rush of fear. "Who's playing hide and seek?" It rumbled low, a sickening grin spreading across its shadowed face. The shed felt impossibly small, the air stifling. Sarah's mind raced, her heart beat louder than any sinister laughter outside could ever echo. They were trapped, alone and isolated, while something wicked festered in the dark. As she lay there, curling her body tightly around the children, an unsettling thought emerged. What if this wasn't just a game? What if there was more to the shed than darkness? As that unmistakable tension gripped her, she realized this was no simple encounter. Something worse lingered just beyond the shadows, perhaps waiting to reveal itself. The laughter outside faded, and in its place, an eerie stillness settled over everything. Would they survive the night? What had they unwittingly awakened? The figure turned, the door creaked ominously, and darkness loomed large. The shadows thickened inside the shed as the figure's presence loomed, oppressive and palpable. Sarah felt the children's small bodies pressed against her, shivering in the silence, each breath beyond their hiding spot like a betrayal. She dared not move, not even to comfort them. Outside, the wind's howl shifted into something more, a chorus of whispers, carrying snippets that were almost human, intermingling with the echo of that dreadful laughter. It never ceased, always creeping closer, feeding on their terror. "Where are you?" the figure called, its voice slithering like a snake through the dimness. "I know you're here." The glint of metal tugged at Sarah's gaze, pulling her thoughts away from the children. She had heard tales of rusted tools and lost hunters in these woods, stories told around campfires, wrapped in cautionary tones. They painted the wild as a malevolent spirit, hungry for souls that strayed too far from safety. "I can smell you." The figure took a step further into the shed, boots thudding on the creaky wooden floor. The scent of wet earth mingled with something metallic, something foul. Kyle squeezed Ella tighter, the fear radiating off him. Sarah swallowed hard, a desperate attempt to suppress the rising dread. Should she make a sound? Should she leap from their hiding place? But then, what would that accomplish? "We're not playing anymore." The figure's voice shifted, gaining an edge of impatience, a growl that echoed deep, resonating in the pit of her stomach. come out, wherever you are." Ella's soft whimper was like a spark igniting a fire, it shattered the trance of stillness. "Mom, I want to go home." Sarah wrapped her arms tighter around them, her heart hammering against her ribs. The desperation in her children's voices pulled at her, but they were safer here, hidden among the stacks of supplies. They had to remain hidden until that thing left. With a sudden movement, the figure turned, heading toward a shadowed corner of the shed. The glint was more pronounced now, revealing a hooked blade reflecting the meager light. "I can just wait," it hissed, the promise in its voice laced with malevolence. "I'll wait until you come running out." Time slowed. Sarah felt her body tense as she held her breath. The figure began to pace, muttering under its breath, a fragmented tune laden with jeers. Whispers drifted from beyond the shed as some dark force seemed to unify with the figure's grotesque amusement. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the outside, the sound of what seemed like a massive force slamming against the building. The figure paused, confusion flickering across its features. What was that? The hairs on Sarah's neck stood on end. This was their chance. Whatever was out there might be a distraction. But just as she began to consider bolting, another, deeper growl rumbled from the direction of the noise, this one heavier, more primal. It reverberated around them, a warning to stay silent, stay still. What else is lurking out there? The figure looked back sharply. It's not just me who plays hide and seek, the darkness pressed in from all sides. Sarah felt as if it were crawling beneath her skin, rooting around inside her, feeding off her fear. She wanted to scream, to fight, to save her kids, but what if coming out from behind the crate invited a fate worse than that moment of surrender? A game of survival? How quaint. It snickered, and Sarah could feel something sinister bubbling just under the surface of those words. In that sinister silence, the growl outside escalated, rumbling into an anguished roar that rattled the shed's foundation, forcing the figure to back away, trembling for just a moment. It faced the heavy door, anxious now, as if aware that something more dangerous was crossing into their shadow, but what was it? Was help arriving? Or was it something darker? With both fear and instinct urging her to act, Sarah heard the creak of the door as a new shape pressed against it from the other side. What had they awakened? A flicker of hope pierced through despair as she wondered if the next moment would bring salvation or doom, while the figure whispered intents that chilled her blood like ice. As the unseen intruder clawed at the door, Sarah's heart raced with the realization that choices were moments away. Would whatever came next be their only chance at salvation? Or would it open the gate to something even more horrific? The darkness loomed larger, swallowing all light, while anticipation built, heartbeats echoing like thunder in the silence. The door shuddered under the force of whatever waited on the other side. Sarah's mind raced, tangled like the shadows surrounding them. She held her breath, the air thick and stale, as her instincts screamed for her to run away, as far away from the figure and whatever lurked in the night. "Mom." Ella's voice trembled, a fragile whisper that cut through the chaos in Sarah's mind. The child's fear mirrored her own, a haunting duet that clawed at her insides. Kyle squeezed his sister's hand tighter, his resilience wavering under the eerie atmosphere. Sarah's heart cracked a little more as she felt their small bodies trembling against her. They had to stay quiet, they had to hold on just a little longer. The figure's eyes narrowed, its gaze locking on the door with a primal intensity. "What are you waiting for?" it hissed. "You think I'm scared of the dark?" It laughed, a low, menacing sound that pricked the edges of sanity. Every word echoed with intoxicating madness, feeding on Sarah's growing desperation. Another clawing sound raked against the door, splinters flying as something massive resumed its assault. The figure backed away, confusion rising into a frenzied agitation. What is that?" Then, the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing filled the shed, hot and animalistic. Each exhale seemed to carry the weight of a predator poised to strike. Sarah felt the hairs on her neck rise again, panic surging through her. She had two choices: push through the shadows and risk confronting the malevolent figure, or keep her children hidden and trust that whatever stalked outside would emerge as a savior. Each option felt like a dagger aimed straight at her heart. The laughter from the figure twisted into something pitiful, filled with an edge of fear. "It's game time," it muttered, backing away from the door as if wards of protection might be keeping it inside. But for Sarah, the game felt like one rigged against her. This thing was dangerous, and she could see the sweat beading on its forehead. Darkness pooled around the door, swallowing every taint of light like an insatiable beast, and as the growling grew nearer, she realized the danger was more than she had ever imagined. Kyle shifted beside her, a brave but foolhardy move. "Mom, we need to get out of here." But the young boy had no concept of the terror that lay in wait. Suddenly, the door splintered. A crack appeared, wide enough for a slender, clawed hand to reach through. It clawed at the air with a chilling hunger. Sarah's breath hitched, she couldn't let it see her. Her instincts kicked in, she tugged the children back, her body blocking their view. "Don't look," she whispered fiercely, trembling hands feathering their faces. The figure, momentarily distracted, took advantage of the moment. It lunged at the door, the wood cracked again, agony echoing in the splintering sound. An otherworldly growl reverberated, shaking the ground beneath them, causing their breaths to quake as much as their bodies. "What if it's worse than him?" Kyle said, eyes wide, scanning the darkened corners of the shed for any escape. At that moment, a new entity burst through the door in a cascade of splinters. It was larger than life. A hulking shadow stepped into the shed, its form melting into the darkness. A surge of air filled the tiny space, and Sarah felt her heart leap into her throat. The tension ignited like a match in dry grass. A monstrous silhouette loomed over the figure, monstrous and furious, its growling deeper now, vibrating through the air, a sound that was both terrifying and strangely protective. "Mom! What is that?" But before she could respond, the hulking shadow slammed into the figure with power, sending it sprawling against the far wall, the blade clattering from its grip. Sarah's heart raced. Was this savior or executioner? A deafening clamor filled the air, a feral clash of energy, and in one flawed moment of decision, she realized there was no time left for choices. The children would need to act. Would they face the chaos, or would they retreat into the ever-deepening darkness? With a forceful grip, she made her move. Would they escape the clutches of one terror only to be consumed by another? The answer hung heavy in the air, a question teetering on the edge of dread. The clash echoed violently, a tempest of sounds reverberating within the cramped space. Sarah barely had time to process the chaos. Light spilled in from the doorway where wood splintered and bent under the force of the monstrous silhouette. The hulking creature growled, a low, rumbling promise of destruction as it cornered the figure like a haunt from a nightmare. "What the hell is that?" Sarah murmured beneath her breath, her heart racing in tandem with the chaos. Ella's grip tightened around her leg, her small frame quaking like a leaf. Kyle looked up, eyes alight with a mixture of terror and curiosity, as if he thought he could decipher the horrors unfolding before them. The shrieking figure, now pinned against the wall, gasped for breath. There was a wildness in its eyes, a flicker of desperation battling against the fearsome power closing in. "You think you're saving them?" It shrieked, laughter mixing with a choked sob. "You're too late. It's out for blood." In a flash, the monstrous creature swung its massive arm, knocking the weapon from the figure's grip. The blade clattered to the floor, shimmering ominously in the darkness. The figure snarled, a hint of madness dancing on its lips as it clawed at the air, desperate and dangerous. "Mom!" Kyle cried, his voice breaking through the tumult. "We've gotta run." Sarah hesitated, torn between the instinct to protect and the aching need to escape. But the heavy, pungent smell of sweat and fear seeped around her like a suffocating fog. "Stay behind me," she commanded, pushing her children to shield them further from the fray. The monster loomed ever closer, shadows clawing at its edges. She felt its heat radiating in waves, causing her skin to prick with an uneasy thrill. Was it friend or foe? The uncertainty was unbearable. Then, without warning, the ground jolted violently beneath them. The structure of the shed shuddered, floorboards splintering under the weight of the looming creature. Dust and debris rained from above, dancing in the dim light. Sarah groaned inwardly, anxiety crashing over her. They were trapped in a nightmare. Run. Now. Without waiting for another word, she turned to bolt through the door with the children in tow. But her feet were met with an unseen barricade. The door, once an escape route, now seemed like jaws waiting to snap shut. She fell back against the wall, panting, pulling her children close. The growling intensified, an unholy fury born of the creature, and suddenly, the figure surged forward, a last-ditch effort to regain control. As its body collided against the monster, Sarah could see every detail: a twisted face marred by desperation, hair matted with sweat and fear. It clawed and grasped at the creature, but the darkness had stacked the odds against it. Yet in that moment of chaos, Sarah caught a glimpse of something strange, an object tucked beneath the figure's torn clothing, glinting dully in the dim light. Was it a tool? An amulet? Every breath she took felt weighted, pushing her toward that shimmering glimmer, a whisper promising survival. "Mom, we can't stay here." Ella whimpered, her tiny hands trembling in Sarah's grip. I know. But fear gnawed at Sarah's insides. Bewilderment creeping in. A part of her was electrical, charged with fear, yet drawn to that glimmer just beyond reach. "Help us!" She shouted into the fray, her voice both a plea and a challenge. With a hunting instinct, she found her footing, stepping forward with a flicker of courage. "What do we do now?" But as she did, the creature turned. Shadows poured like ink through the doorway, an overpowering darkness foreshadowing dread. Something primal stirred within her, and a single thought gripped her heart: if she couldn't escape this chaos, would she have to embrace the darkness instead? "Mom, hurry!" Kyle urged, his voice laced with panic. Would they find salvation? Or would they be swallowed by the unknown? The shadows loomed ever closer, and Sarah's decision could tip the balance between life and oblivion. In that fleeting moment, she realized sometimes, to escape a nightmare, one must unlock the terror within, what lay beyond that threshold of darkness. Sarah's instincts screamed at her. The darkness pressed in, thick as tar, and a low growl rumbled beyond the door, shaking the walls. She glanced at the figure, desperate yet determined, writhing on the floor. It had become a casualty in a fight beyond her comprehension. "Mom!" Kyle's voice sliced through her thoughts, his wide eyes filled with raw fear. The pull of that glimmer, the promise of salvation, gnawed at her will, but the monstrous creature was closing in, a predator honing in on its prey. "Stay close!" She barked, an edge creeping into her voice, pushing her children behind her. But moving toward the figure felt wrong, like stepping toward a black hole. Every instinct told her to retreat. Then the figure's hands shot out, grabbing nothing but air, and yet, there was a spark of clarity, a wild hope that flared up with a cruel twist. "You need to take it," it screamed, voice a shattered knife. "Use it against it." "Use what?" Sarah shouted, feeling her body freeze in place, torn between the safety of flight and the horror of the unknown. "The amulet. It's the only way." In that moment, something clicked deep in Sarah's mind, a shift that electrified her senses. Eyes darting back to the creature, she reasoned, found something familiar in its rage. Was it smart? Could it be outmaneuvered? Then, lunging forward, she made a decision. "Kyle, Ella, stay right behind me." Setting her feet firm against the ground, she moved toward the figure, the familiar glint growing stronger as she approached. It was there, nestled into the tattered fabric, entangled by fear and desperation. She reached down, fingers trembling, the decision heavy on her heart, but as she gripped that object, the creature roared, an earth-shaking sound that rattled her insides, vibrating against her bones. The shadows surged with it, darting forward, grasping for the last breath of light. "Sarah, run!" The figure screamed, its voice a tangled mess of panic and urgency. The amulet pulsed in her hand, warmth flooding her skin in stark contrast to the ice in her veins. She stumbled back, panic ripping through her as she turned toward her children. Ella trembled against her, staring wide-eyed at the encroaching horror, while Kyle clutched the hem of Sarah's shirt. "Mom!" He whimpered, eyes darting between the chaos of shadows and the flicker of courage in her hand. "Trust me," Sarah shouted, fueling herself with determination. No time for second-guessing now. The creature lunged, its maw wide like a chasm, ready to swallow them whole. In a surge of instinct, Sarah thrust the amulet forward, feeling its heat radiate from her palm like a shield. The moment it crossed the threshold of darkness, a blinding light erupted. For an instant, silence. The world stood still. Then came an explosion of sound, the growl morphing into a screech of distortion that echoed around her, crashing like thunder. Sarah shut her eyes, not ready to face what the light revealed. They had been given a moment, a breath of freedom amidst the chaos, but how much longer would it last? Trembling fingers gripped the amulet as Sarah opened her eyes, fear and hope colliding in her chest. The creature stood still, momentarily paralyzed in the glow. Shadows flickered, darting back like wildfire. But then, with a guttural roar, it snapped back to life, more furious than before. "Go!" Sarah yelled, urgency rising again. As they bolted for the door, darkness clawed at their heels, wrapping around them like a living shroud. A cold dread washed over her. Had they merely bought time, or had they ignited something far worse? Will we be fast enough? Sarah's heart raced. What awaited them outside that door? With every ounce of strength, she pushed forward. The amulet pulsed in her grip, a constant reminder of the choice she had made. Desperate to escape, she didn't look back, not even for a second. "Mom! It's getting closer!" Kyle cried, panic ringing in his voice. What would happen when they crossed the threshold again? Could they step into the light, or would they be pulled back into the void of terror that waited just behind? The door flung open, shattering the oppressive darkness within the shed, and as they spilled out into the moonlit chaos, fear propelled them forward. Sarah's heart thundered. She felt the shadows stretching behind them, their icy fingers grasping at the edges of her mind, desperate to pull her back into despair. "You can't stop now," she shouted, urgency saturating every word. The amulet pulsed in her hand, warm and electrifying, tethering her to hope. They dashed through the clearing, the massive creature's angry roars reverberating within her bones, intermingling with the laughter of the townsfolk echoing like a sinister symphony. Her children ran ahead, determination etched on their faces. It was a race against time, a fight not just for escape, but for survival. "Mom, over there." Kyle pointed to a faint glimmer through the trees, their only chance. "We can make it." Sarah yelled back as she sprinted after her children, limbs moving like instinct driven by adrenaline. The pulse of the amulet surged in rhythm with her heart, offering a shimmering path through the dark. They plunged deeper into the woods, branches scraping against them like claws, but Sarah didn't feel the pain. The urgency fueled her senses, sharp and alive. The laughter faded, echoing behind them, muffled by the environment cloaking the darkness that had pursued them. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman clad in flowing garments that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Her eyes glimmered like stars, filled with an ancient wisdom and unspoken fears. "You're not safe. Follow me." Her voice rang clear and commanding, like a bell cutting through the cacophony. "Mom, who is that?" Ella gasped, glancing back anxiously. "Trust her," Sarah shouted as they veered to join the mysterious woman, hope battling against uncertainty. The woman led them through a winding path littered with twisted roots and whispering leaves, every step filled with an energy that felt almost tangible. "You must harness the amulet's true power," she urged, glancing back to ensure the monster remained behind. "What power? How?" Sarah cried, breathless but resolute. "Your familial bond, your love, it fuels the amulet. Channel it. You are stronger together." The woman's words rang in Sarah's heart, stitching together the fears into a fabric of determination. Fueled by instinct and love for her children, Sarah gripped the amulet tighter. "We can do this together. Focus on our love. Focus on each other," she urged, turning to her children, their eyes wide yet unwavering, they gathered close, a circle of unity amidst the storm. Think of the times we've laughed, the hugs, the memories, everything that makes us a family. As she spoke, the amulet began to glow, bathing them in a radiant light that began to push back the shadows. The air throbbed with potential, a tether tying their hearts intricately together. As the creature's growls echoed nearer, the emptiness seeping around them, they felt the powerful connection erupt into a force that pulsed through their veins, rooting them in that moment, grounding them against the fear. Now! Sarah yelled, raising the amulet high. Release our love. In that breathtaking instant, a burst of light emanated from the amulet, an explosion of warmth that spread outward, pushing the shadows back. The air crackled with energy, filling the night with a harmonious chorus that drowned out the darkness. Joyful laughter intertwined with determination surged forward, scattering the shadows like shards of ice under the sun. Facing down the creature, they stood unwavering, light blazing through their love, grounding themselves in one powerful moment, a united front against the malevolence threatening to consume them. The beast shrieked as the light enveloped it, the shadows skittering away into nothingness. Momentarily stunned, it stumbled back, fury etched in every line of its nightmarish form before dissipating like mist against the rising dawn. Breathless and stunned, Sarah hugged her children close. They had taken control, reclaiming their love, their bond, the foundation of their strength. As dawn broke over the Appalachian woods, the shadows of that haunted night began to lift, and the once strapping town now appeared in the soft light, eerily beautiful yet strangely relieved, like a child as forgotten fears washed away in the morning glow. Sarah turned to the children, tears mixing with triumph on her cheeks. We did it. Yes, we're safe. Kyle breathed, still catching his breath, but disbelief painted his awe-stricken features. Ella, still shaken, smiled brightly, the tension uncoiling amidst a shimmering new dawn. We're a team, Mom. They stood together, united against what lay ahead, picking up the pieces of their fractured journey. Sarah turned to the woman, connection sparking between them. Thank you, she said, eyes filled with sincerity. The woman smiled, her ethereal form glowing like a fading star. You found the way. Trust your love, it will always be your guide. And in that moment, they understood it was never just about the suffering, the secrets that shrouded their past. It was about the light they created together. As they turned to walk toward the sunrise, hope ignited in their hearts, a new journey unfurling. In that quiet, pivotal moment, the shadows receded, washed away by a promise of brighter days. Before this adventure faded into memory, let us just say, if you want to keep following these captivating journeys, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. Smash that like button so we can feed the algorithm and bring more stories to life. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the Johnsons' incredible escape. Let's hear what you think. And don't forget to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need this thrilling conclusion in their lives. We are all part of this journey together. Your support means the world to us.